Now we're with Roger Morris from Precise Mortgages, but I'm not quite sure who to address. This Roger Morris or this Roger Morris? Tell me a bit more about this superhero.
Well, I think in us all we are an underlying superhero at some point in our lives. So when we came up with the concept of superheroes, I think anybody who does business development in the mortgage industry has an understanding and a reliance to assist the broker, whether you can or you can tell them another lender can. So the concept came when brokers ring us, we will always tell you how to place a case and what selection of lenders. So I will maybe mention 5 or 6 other lenders that could do it, and then it's down to who offers the best rate. So I think whether or not you go the extra mile, save the deal, save the client. So that's where the superheroes came from. Truly amazing.
I love it. It's something a bit different.
It is. But if you phone most lender BDMs, they're lucky if they return a phone call. If they can't do it, they say no, and that's it. Yet they know the criteria of the lenders that can do it, but never offer up that information. So it's going the extra mile.
Yeah.
So that's why.
I'm impressed.
I am
with
as well.
both of you.
Very good.
Now, down to business. How do you think the announcement that Buytolet will be affected by the European Mortgage Directive will change the market, given that the Buytolet lending and valuations are currently outperforming the residential?
Yeah, there's 2 parts to that proposed legislation. The most interesting part, which most likely has the potential to become legislation, is the area that covers the involuntary buy-to-let. So the involuntary buy-to-let will be where you got divorced and your property was then unencumbered, you married again, and your future husband also had a property and you decided to rent one out as a pension provision. When you think the take-up on private pensions in this country is still exceptionally low, people feel more secure by actually owning a property which could fund their retirement.
Yeah.
There's also the inherited properties. So if you actually work it out, countrywide figures showed that 93.6% of the UK's buy-to-let, according to their survey, is owned by one individual, which would be encompassed in this law. So it would actually take up a much higher dramatic provision for future legislation. However, a large stock of that is unencumbered, so would then fall out the regulation until they're remortgaged. What we haven't to do is to constrain the buy-to-let market, and the buy-to-let market currently provides 1 in 5 social housing is rented from a private landlord. So if we brought too much legislation in, you could suddenly find a big problem in being able to provide any accommodation for the growing population of the UK.
So looking to Precise Mortgages, and recently what you unveiled was new criteria for self-employed customers. Why do you think that those changes were needed, and do you think that other lenders might follow suit?
I think without a doubt the majority of the big 5 are in such a turmoil of understanding what they're doing themselves and have constantly made regulatory mistakes, never understood the market, and are that preoccupied by cutting brokers out and going direct, and also going for cherry picking, that they've actually become out of tune with what people want. The self-employed is now the fastest growing part of people who are engaged away from the door. So for people to come back into work, we're more likely to go self-employed than they will employed. The stats are incredible. The rise of the self-employed is incredible. Isn't it funny that a person who works for a self-employed business can get a mortgage straight away because they've got PY employment, but yet the person who runs the business in theory can't get a mortgage for 3 years. So what we've decided to do with our expertise is actually look at the self-employed. We will now, with a typical self-employed person, take the net profit, and under their SA 302s we will add back in their pension contributions. With limited companies, so 12 months limited company, trading, 1 year's accounts, we will do the salary and dividends. We will add back in their pension contributions, which this year the max was £40,000. We can add back in the difference if they've got a company car. That's kind of negligible, about 2,000 to 3,000 on average. If the wife is company secretary, we can add back in whatever they would contribute back, which is anywhere between 9,800 and around 20 grand. So we also will now take a view on a net return profit. Now that is a definitive statement, because what we're able to do, if we can get running commentary from the chartered accountant to look at where their income is, the net return profit isn't got a mortgage or a charge against it, and it's not needed for cash flow, we can add all that back into the mix. And what we're able to do now is to lead the way when it comes to self-employed people being able to capital raise for a mortgage.
So going back to Buytolet and the fraud surrounding Buytolet, do you think it should be scrutinised a bit more closely in the industry?
Absolutely. We've seen a number of stats come out when both TNW and BMID, Birmingham Midshires, had the FCA come to understand that they're the two biggest in the marketplace, two very, very brilliant lenders in that sector. And when they actually went door knocking to see who was it that moved in, the percentage of residential mortgages that were supposed to be Buytolet, in other words, people had misled the lender, was very, very high, to an alarming rate. I'm not sure the stats, but I've heard they were very high. So lenders like Precise, and of the 60 Buytolet lenders out there, what we're now saying to the broker, you need to understand the client's current situation. If they have got 3 children living in a 2-bedroom flat and their first Buytolet is a 4-bedroom detached house, you should not give us that application, because the probability that is not going to be a Buytolet mortgage. And it's also key to understand who else lives in the property. Precise is running a number of workshops to educate the brokers on what they should look for in processing the Buytolet application. They can't just simply look at the property to rent out. They've got to understand the client's personal situation.
In your opinion, honest opinion, what key changes do you think the market needs to make to ensure its health and it remains healthy?
I think the first thing is lenders need to start paying correct proc fees to brokers. At the moment, they're exploiting the market. You've got lenders like Santander on product transfers, which is a full advice remortgage. They don't pay a proc fee. They say it's system errors. I personally don't believe that's possible. I believe it's the larger lenders trying to see what they can get away with. There was a lot of news that the regulator was looking at proc fees. The regulator, in my opinion, wasn't looking at proc fees. It was lenders trying to make margin. I think if brokers are going to be professional, lenders need to pay them at least 0.5% proc fee for both Buytolet and residential. I think lenders realistically should pull out of dealing with the general public. How can any lender give advice on their products only? To me, if the consumer was explained that this isn't advice, this is just a terminology and it's just going to be product only, the consumer would get a much better service. So I think all lenders should pull out immediately of dealing with the direct public and engage their efforts, the resources and their profits into building the broker community. When I started in mortgages in the 80s, there was 500,000 people who could write a mortgage. There's now 14,000 to 500,000, with an increase in population of about 14 million. So I think the industry has been told under MMR that advisors giving advice can only truly be given by mortgage advisors. We've just seen RBS being fined yet again, and we will see more of the big lenders. So I'd say the industry needs to get behind its advisors and invest into them.
Thank you. You best get off and save a few more lives, but thank you for taking the time to talk to us, and you.
Thank you. Bye.